sometimes I think like we don't love ourselves enough to perceive like when somebody's harming us that it's like not okay. But the minute it happens to somebody we care about, it can show us for real.
Yeah.
Like if somebody were to hurt my mom, for example,
Yeah.
right? Like I would never be able to continue with a person who could hurt my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I might take that abuse in my own personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I might not feel like I'm worth better, but I know my mom is worth better. I know the people in my life are worth better. And that's a tricky thing.
It's a show of like where we are with our own self-esteem. Welcome back to the FTS podcast. Today I'm with Alex,
Hello.
whom I just met today, and we're hitting it off.
Loving it. Having the best time.
You're a friend of Fuck the Stigma.
I'm a super friend of the pod. I love it. I'm already in love with it.
Yeah. So we're kind of doing like another little go run. She's actually going to be interviewing me today.
Yep.
You watched my episode where I'm kind of just giving a gist of my life story and how this podcast came about and my story with like going into recovery. So like, have you ever struggled with like substance use or mental health?
Not in the most obvious ways, but I think in the more insidious, subtle ways, like in the crippling anxiety type of way, in the needing to be perfect all the time to the point where it's like almost like a paralysis kind of way, which I think a lot of people can probably relate to. We were even talking about it before the podcast started about just anxiety.
Well, what was the question you asked me? Do you struggle with anxiety?
Yeah, basically. I ask everybody that because I like to just get it out. Like,
me too.
Yeah, like once you put it on the table, I feel like you sort of relax a little bit. Like, oh, you have anxiety too? Everyone can sort of like not try to perform for the other person at that point. Yeah. Like even in this moment, I'll be vulnerable and say, this is an anxiety producing situation.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
Everything in my life the past few months has been making me extremely anxious, but it's part of, I'm just still willing to push through it. And I try very hard for it to like not debilitate me.
That's the most important thing, I think, is being willing to sit in the discomfort of the anxiety and just continue living your life and letting it teach you whatever it's going to teach you. Because what you don't want to do is just stay where you are or like not push past it, because then you don't grow.
Yeah.
You know, anxiety is like the perfect excuse to not grow.
Yeah, like I'm too anxious to go to this meeting or do this thing, so I'm just gonna sit here.
Yeah, I'm too anxious to come to New York to do the podcast. I'm too anxious to interview Laisha. You know, but like who knows where this conversation is gonna go and all the things we're gonna uncover. If I told myself that I was too anxious to do it, we might have deprived the world of me and you.
Yeah, right. And I was like, nothing is changing from the conversation we're having right now. Just mics and a camera and lights are on us now. Yeah.
That being said, Laisha, you struggle with anxiety?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah.
What is something that gives you anxiety?
For me, it's a lot of social situations. I think I mainly struggle with social anxiety. For example, like in the midst of my addiction, I needed a Xanax to go into the grocery store or to like go to a place where there's more than 2 other people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's funny because I basically talk to other people for a living, but this gives me a lot of anxiety.
What do you think it is about those situations or about like being perceived by somebody that brings anxiety out in you?
Because I think in the back of my head, I'm thinking about how I look and how I'm coming across. Like it's all just self-centered thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
Wanting to be perceived perfectly by the person in front of you.
Yeah. And I have like an ideal version of myself that I want to be like viewed as. And that's unrealistic. Like everybody's going to have a different opinion about me or you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm doing my best to be me. Like whatever you think about me isn't my problem.
Yeah. I think I struggle with that too. Like it's almost like a control thing. Like I want to just be able to control how I'm being perceived.
Yes.
And that is, you're right, just completely not just unrealistic, it's impossible.
Exactly.
And I think a good perspective that's helped me has been like, maybe the person in front of you just needs you to be whatever it is that you are.
And sometimes the person can say just something that makes me feel more comfortable with them, which in turn gives me less anxiety about whatever it is.
Yeah, actually, I struggle with anxiety, and because I struggle with anxiety, I go out of my way sometimes to make the person in front of me not feel anxious.
Yeah.
You know, like I will try to say that thing to the person in front of me that's going to make them relax or that's going to make them feel safe. And in that way, we can kind of conceptualize our anxiety as a gift, right? It like helps us to create safety for the people around us. So it's like, I struggle with this thing, but maybe our anxiety is meant to like create safety for people, other people.
Yeah, putting it out there makes you feel so much better. Like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling a little anxious right now. I'm feeling anxious about the next few days.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm just going to start doing that a lot more too. Like, I think that I'm just going to start being honest about how I'm feeling up front.
Yeah, that's really good.
People are going to think I'm weird, but it's all good.
It creates that openness environment. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I like doing that in general too. Like, just, I'm a feeling person. I don't know if you can relate, but I like to be like, how are you feeling? You know, like not even just like I'm feeling anxious, but like, how are you feeling? So why don't we do that?
What's hard for me is really identifying with feelings. And like, it's something I'm a lot better at than I was a few years ago, but it's still so hard for me to label what's going on in my head or in my body.
Maybe that's what anxiety, that's also something that anxiety can be. Like, I just don't even know what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a whole bunch of things.
And then my head just goes to, I don't know, I'm feeling nothing.
Right. You just numb out.
Yes. I feel like that's like what my coping mechanism is like nothing, blank. I'm unaffected. Like, this like nonchalant mask.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you do in a moment where you're feeling anxious or in a period of life where you're feeling anxious? Like, what are your other coping mechanisms?
I really don't like, because my therapist asked me this literally a few days ago, and I'm like, I think I talk about it, like I tell somebody, like, because getting everything out of your head, like your head is spiraling and spinning all the time. It never shuts up.
Never.
So if I just let out what my brain is thinking, like, hey, this is a thought. Oh, this is another thought. It kind of helps you have like order with it, or it helps you make it make sense.
Yeah. For me, it's journaling.
Yeah.
It helps me do exactly what you're talking about. If I'm journaling, I'm seeing it all on a piece of paper, and seeing it on the piece of paper in like physical form helps me to sort of like disconnect from it and make a little bit of sense of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, this is the story I'm telling myself. Like, if you just sit down and give yourself some space and time, or even just like a conversation where you just like dump it out on the other person, and that person can be like, oh, this is probably what you're feeling.
Yeah. And especially like, even when it comes to like making a decision, like weighing the pros and cons of like, okay, this might be the outcome of decision number 1. Oh, but this could happen with decision number 2. And then like just talking about it and helps you kind of find out what you want. And that was also another hard thing for me, was like having, because your emotions are a compass. The way you're feeling is a compass for like what you really want.
Totally.
So being in tune with your feelings and emotions can truly help you come to a decision with whatever it is.
Yeah, 100%. I have this thing that I do where if I don't know exactly what it is that I'm feeling, and I need to make a decision, I'll just check in with my like physical body.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about this before the podcast too. Like, does this make me feel tense, or does it make me feel relaxed? It's not a perfect system, because sometimes it's the thing that makes you feel tense that you actually are avoiding and you need to do.
Yeah.
Right. But if you can get quiet enough, sometimes you can feel in your body that something makes you contract, and it's not right for you.
Yeah.
So
it's hard, because sometimes you need to do that really uncomfortable thing. And I, in my recovery, have been taught to do the uncomfortable thing.
Yeah. Talk more about that.
For example, like even like doing the podcast in the first place. Like, I started this podcast and I was like, wait, so I'm gonna have to be on camera and talk to a new person.
Does that
every
make
week.
you nervous?
Yeah,
Really?
100%. I do it anyways though. And it's provided, like, this platform has provided like a lot of growth for me. and hopefully other people, anybody who listens or watches. And so like that, for example, telling you about my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny though, because like if you were to ask me how I'm feeling every day, I'd be like, oh my goodness. I think it would honestly help though with identifying a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, like going to that place I really don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like going to that meeting or honestly, like even struggling to go to the grocery store. It's like, yeah, I honestly, do need to eat today. So
yeah. Or like sometimes it can show up in relationships with people. Like, does this person make me feel tense, or does this person make me feel like I want to open up? Like being around you makes me feel like I want to open up, but it's because you're so vulnerable and so open and whatever. But I think our bodies can be a good way of guiding us through life, and like in decisions that we should be making or not making, or just things that are going to lead to growth or things that are going to lead to like self-destruction. I think your body can actually be a good starting point.
I do. Yeah, I feel that one a lot. Because if I compare like the people that I've had in my life previously to the people I have in my life now, I don't even think it was like a thing I was like consciously doing, but I'm like, wow, I have amazing people in my life now. And it's because I genuinely just feel comfortable and open with them. Before, I'm hanging out with people that would probably fuck me over any chance they got, or that would rob me, or just a horrible influence, or would convince me to like drink and drive because they're too fucked up. Let's just get the other fucked up person to drive. Or just, people that just didn't have like my best interest in mind when like I probably had theirs.
Yeah.
And just like this, manipulating, malicious people. Like now I can like see that a little clearer with people today. And I feel like growing up is just, like the people that you hang around with tell a lot about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. What was that process like for you it must have been hard, like to remove the people from your life that shouldn't have been there or shouldn't be there anymore. Can you talk about that? Do you have any stories around that?
So it's funny because it was like kind of simple for me because I just moved across the country and then just didn't reach out. So it was like really easy. It's like, where you can't get me, like I'm 3,000 miles away. Right. So that part was honestly really simple for me, but I think it was mainly harder in terms of like past relationships, like romantic and sexual relationships were probably the hardest ones to let go of.
Yeah.
Because there's just this attachment and like uncertainty, could it work out? Yeah.
I also think that we can sort of become so familiar with people, or relationships can even be sort of an addiction in and of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you had anybody?
Oh, my goodness.
It's a tough question, but have you had anybody, any relationships that have been like that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. So this was actually in recovery. I think maybe like the worst relationship I've been in was in sobriety. I think like I had a moment where I like swore off of like sex and like romance because I felt as if I wasn't of any, like I couldn't provide anything for anybody else. And then also like questioning my sexuality. So I was like, I'm just going to figure me out, do me, I'm done. And then somebody comes along and she's, there's like this 11-year age gap and she's going through a divorce, has 3 kids.
Girl.
And it's just like on many levels extremely inappropriate.
Yeah.
But she's giving me attention in something I've been missing for so long. And she's willing to give me just like this sexual relief and just validation and attention. And like once it started, it just like it felt impossible to stop. Even though it was just so horrible and toxic, and I told her I was done.
Yeah.
The next day I'm back with her.
Right.
It was just this like constant cycle of like, why can't I leave you? I'm like addicted to this right now. And it's like, I know you're horrible for me, but I can't stop. And I'm stone cold sober.
What was the point where you really knew and you were ready to walk away?
When she hurt one of the people that was like closest to me.
Okay.
Like you hurt somebody else in my life. Like you can hurt me all you want, but now you're hurting like my best friend.
Right.
That's when I was like, I'm done.
What did that mean to you? Like, what was the significance of that? Like, she was willing to hurt somebody that you cared about. Does that mean that it wasn't really love? Like, what did it show you?
That, oh my God, she's a piece of shit. It just does. It just hit different to visually see that you're hurting somebody that I really care about. I don't know what it was. It was just like, that was horrible. Like, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
That was just like the switch. I was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, that's tough.
Sometimes
I think like we don't love ourselves enough to perceive like when somebody's harming us that it's like not okay. But the minute it happens to somebody we care about, it can show us for real.
Yeah.
Like if somebody were to hurt my mom, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Like I would never be able to continue with a person who could hurt my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But I might take that abuse in my own personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I might not feel like I'm worth better, but I know my mom is worth better. I know the people in my life are worth better. And that's a tricky thing.
It's a show of like where we are with our own self-esteem.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Have you struggled at all in your life with self-esteem issues?
Yes, 100%. I'm the youngest sibling, right? So I have 2 older siblings. And like, we talk, older sibling will talk shit about their younger sibling.
Yeah,
call them names and call them names. And even your parents might do it. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't do that, but it happens. I think like we've all done it or have experienced it. But that gets to you as a kid and growing up. Like my sibling calling me like stupid all the time. And like,
yeah, you internalize that.
I viewed myself as somebody that was just not smart. And I was like a little chubbier growing up and you just call me fat. And I'm like, oh, thanks. But, and my name's Laisha. He'd be like, Laisha the liar. Laisha's the liar. And just like do a spin on that. And it's so stupid and like dumb and whatever. That's like sibling bullshit talk.
But like that with you. It's crazy how that stuff will imprint on you and then show up later in life.
Yeah. So my self-esteem wasn't good whatsoever. And I was just growing up. I was so in middle school and high school. I was so unsure of myself and like what I wanted. And because I didn't know myself and I never like really took a look at myself in the mirror and like, just accepted like even what I look like physically or how I even felt about myself. It was just something that never crossed like my mind to do. Yeah. I was always like so occupied, like looking at you and obsessing over you or what you were doing and just never took a look within. And I was like just really depressed and anxious growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, shit self-esteem.
Yeah.
The uncertainty within me was insane.
And you're in a different place with it now?
Yeah, 100%.
So this is like sort of a cliche question, but I always love hearing people answer it. If you could go back to that version of yourself who was struggling, what advice would you give her? What would you tell her from where you sit right now?
I think I would tell my younger self, like, Laisha, it's okay to be who you are and to like who you like. And it's okay to dress the way you want to dress and just do the things you want to do. Like, fuck opinions, ideas, or what people tell you. Like, I really want my younger self to just, like, do what she pleases to do, what makes her happy, and, like, date who she wants to date. And just like speak her truth. Like, don't be afraid to, tell your truth and say how you feel. Yeah. And stand up for yourself. The amount of bullshit I put up with is insane. I had people in my life that just would constantly put me down, but I just felt so alone that I just like attached to that person because I felt like they were all I had.
Yeah. That's what happens, I think, when you have low self-esteem. You just like accept the treatment that you think you deserve. And learning that you deserve more than that and better than that is like, for some people, it's a lifelong journey, and you're super young. You're what, 21, 22. And you are that version of yourself that you would have wanted to be at that point, right? Yeah. You are sitting in front of people. You are talking and sharing your story and fucking the stigma and not caring about what people, and I'm sure it's not perfect. Like internally we all go through things, but like, do you feel proud of yourself at this point?
I think I do, which is like weird to say. I never thought that would be something I would say, but I really am proud of like myself and the journey and like where I am today. Because yes, I would tell my younger self that, but I'm glad she went through that because that was a learning experience. Because if we don't go through shit like and then grow from it, I don't know.
It's like the only way to learn.
Yeah, you learn and grow through experience. Like somebody can give you a lesson on something, but it doesn't hit the same, or you might not really like absorb it until you experience that thing.
100%.
For example, getting sober at 18. Who wants to get sober at 18? I want to smoke recreational weed at 21. I want to go to the alcohol store at 21 and get some fucking alcohol. So I wasn't really sold on like the sobriety thing at 18, and which was like I communicated that. I'm like I'm really young
to be sober.
I'm too young to be sober.
Not fair.
And but I had the opportunity to hear other people's stories with like going out and smoking a blunt. Like just stay away from the Xanax, stay away from the alcohol. Like maybe you could smoke weed, but I heard people's experiences with just smoking weed, which led them to heroin a week later.
Right. So you couldn't even negotiate that with yourself. Like you just knew that.
Yeah.
Even that was going to be.
Yeah. So
a dark road.
So it's hard because like I haven't used since I was 18, but I decided to take other people's experiences and learn from that because I don't want to feel that pain of relapse, and I don't want to lose everything I've built and have gotten.
Yeah.
You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And it's because you've experienced the pain that you have experienced. It's probably easier for you to like extrapolate that sort of and say, okay, that would lead to maybe even worse or something similar to what I did feel.
Sobriety's a gamble. So like I haven't gambled that relapse.
Good.
Like I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I looked back at my experience in my addiction, and I was like, wait, I did try and stop doing Xans for a little bit. Didn't work. I went back 2 weeks later. So I had to like look back at my experience and see what I could take from it to show me that, yeah, Laisha, you can't just smoke weed and have fun. Like you're gonna drink alcohol later that night.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. You like talking about learning from the experiences that you've had. In a way, you've had like a hard fucking curriculum. You know, like you got the real, you're an AP, like, you know, you graduated early.
Yeah.
Congrats. But that is hard. I mean, it's hard to probably watch people your age do what they do and do it so carefreely and know that that's just not the curriculum you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been hard watching people like go out and like try it again and see if they could use drugs like in an okay manner. And it is a weird opportunity. I'm so grateful for it, but it is really weird that I just decided to, and I'm still on the path to, I could totally fuck it up tomorrow if I wanted. But it is crazy that I'm like on this path of like, right now I'm a one and done. Like I learned what I could, and I soaked it all up, and I just got to keep it going.
So what's like the thing that you hold on to? Like do you have like a mantra or something that helps you like stay grounded in your crazy curriculum that you're on? Or like when you see that other people are going out and doing those things and there might be a little part of you that maybe longs for it in a sense, like what do you remind yourself? Like what keeps you sober at this point?
I feel as if it's not worth it. Like sometimes, cause yeah, I've of course had thoughts of like, I could totally drink and like just be chill and like go to work the next morning and keep my life together. Or I could totally smoke a blunt to, get this anxiety off my shoulders. I've 100% have those thoughts. I just don't play with them for too long because I know the like reality of the situation, like deep down, I'm like, my whole paycheck's going to go to weed.
You know that.
I have a really strong feeling. I'm just, and it really is a fear of like losing what I have today. And again, like taking those people's experiences almost as my own, because I try my very best to see myself in everybody. especially with other addicts and alcoholics. I think we're all very similar, and I just feel as if that would be like I would go down the same path if I did try such thing. I forgot your original question.
Me too.
What was the mantra? What do I tell myself?
Yeah, like what keeps you like sober?
And also just having a lot of faith really keeps me sober and grounded.
Mm-hmm. You went through the steps.
Mm-hmm.
There's 12. I don't know if this is like an appropriate question, but what was like the most challenging step for you along the journey?
So first off, I do want to say the steps are very controversial because there's a lot of different ways to find recovery, and one form of recovery isn't going to work for the other person. Personally, the 12 steps helped me out with, now I'm 3.5 years sober. Like, it worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for John over there, So I do want to emphasize that, but I think the hardest step for me was step 9, making amends, because turning my will and my life over, step 3, to a higher power, and like trusting in a higher power of my own understanding is kind of hard to do and wrap my head around. I was asking everybody in my IOP, I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? And how do you do that?
Right.
How am I need to see God to hand this shit over. Like, where's he at?
Right. That's faith piece.
Yeah. The principle behind that step is faith.
Mm-hmm.
So that one was hard to wrap my head around, and I had a lot of questions about that, but I kind of just doing it in prayer. Like, God, I'm turning this issue over to you. You take control. I'm going to do the next right indicated action.
Right.
That's going to be how I'm applying this step.
Right.
So that was hard, but not the hardest. Step 4, writing all of the bullshit down that I've ever fucking done.
Yikes.
Everybody I have a resentment towards. Everybody I've harmed. Everybody I've had sex with.
Yikes.
And all that stuff. Hard, doable though. I was like so happy to do that stuff. I'm like, yeah, let's get this shit off my chest.
It feels kind of good.
Yeah. And then then you do your character defects, and that's annoying. But because apparently you can't work on your character defects. The way they tell you to do it is just like hand them over to God.
Right.
God's
that was hard for you, just like accept your character defects and give them to...
Because there's certain ones I wanted to hold on to.
Like what?
Like, I'm kind of fucking stingy. I'm a really stingy person. And
that's honest.
I feel like as if that benefits me. I have more money in my bank account at the end of the day, or I have more food. It's selfish though. It's very selfish, and I feel like the more we give, the more we get in return. So I've outgrown that one a little bit more. So like that's one like I wanted to hold on to, and instinctually and subconsciously we want to hold on to these character defects because we feel as if they've helped us get us like this far.
Yeah.
But like I'm not in survival mode anymore.
Right.
So it's like a lot of them are so unnecessary for this point I am in my life. But they just say turn them over to God, and God will take
God's
the ones out. Yeah,
what
God's
he
gonna do a
does.
shit. I'm like, okay, whatever. But 9, 8 was making the list, and 9 is making the actual amends. And like at this point, you have to reach out to the people that you've harmed and make the amend. It's not saying I'm sorry. Amends aren't saying amends aren't saying that you're sorry. Amend is the difference between an amend is that there's action behind it. Either it's like with that person, like you do something for that person to right the wrong, or you just start applying that amend everywhere in your life. So, for example, I've cheated before. I made the amend to that person, and that means I'm not going to cheat on you anymore or with anyone else in this lifetime. Ever. And the point is to stay true to that. And if you fuck up, that's on your own conscience.
Right. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. So that's the amend, is like righting that wrong, but with action backed behind it.
Yeah.
But the hardest part for me wasn't even just like, okay, let me change my actions, because I want to do that. Mm-hmm. But it was just like confronting that person and talking to them and saying like, I did this, and this. I feel so horrible about it. Yeah. And I'm in this place of like being willing to change and wanting to change, and I will, but like can we work this out?
Yeah.
What can I do for you?
Yeah.
That's the amend. And that was so hard for me.
Yeah.
The first one I did was like just fucked. Like they were just like, don't talk to me. Don't ever reach out to me ever again. Which is okay. Those are their wishes and you respect that. It's part of the amend.
Right.
But yeah, so that was just.
Do you have any other examples
of what?
Of like amends that you had to make with people?
Yeah. So growing up, I had a lot of resentment towards my dad for many different reasons. My mom had to leave him at one point. He kept smoking weed and it just caused like this divide between my parents, a lot of arguments, some physical abuse. And I just grew up with a lot of resentment towards him. But I've also wronged him and I've harmed him in many ways. So my time comes to make an amends to my dad. And I do it, I think, like even before I had a year sober. And I'm like, trying to find that right time of like when I should do this. But like, is there really ever a right time for certain things? Not really. You just got to do the damn thing.
Rip the Band-Aid.
Yeah, rip the Band-Aid off. And I think I go to check the mail with him outside or something. And we're walking down the driveway to go to our front door. And I'm like, hey dad. That feeling in your throat where it's just like, it feels like it's closing.
Yep.
I had that feeling and it was just like, it felt hard to talk, but I'm like listing, like, I feel so horribly about crashing every car you've provided me. I feel horrible for using the money you sent me for substances. I feel horrible about calling you mean names and never answering the phone when you were worried about me. I am sorry that I just was never there. I wasn't present. And I was just like not a good daughter overall. And I think like my throat still felt fucking tight and I start tearing up and he's like, it's okay. Like, I love you. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, how can I write this wrong? He's just keep doing what you're doing. Like, you're on the right path. Like, I can overlook all of that. Like, you're just doing amazing. Just keep it going.
What was it like for you to receive love in that moment?
It was weird because like,
weird.
It was weird, but I didn't think he would have reacted any other way.
Yeah.
Because like at that point, even with a few months sober, we were at a good place, a better place than like I have been in like my whole life, maybe.
Yeah, there's something so healing, I think, about that. Like when you feel like you're just the worst, right? Or you're reliving all the things that you put somebody through and they look at you and they just have love in their eyes for you, like love that you don't even probably feel for yourself or feel worthy of in that moment. There's something so cathartically healing about realizing that we're actually worthy of love even when we're fucking up so bad.
Yeah.
And parents are the perfect people like that exemplify that, I think. And I think like if we had that kind of love for ourselves, life would just look a lot different. A lot of what we do, I think, is beat ourselves up and we feel like we're not good enough and we're not worthy. But if we loved ourselves like a mother, like how much less struggle and suffering would we go through? Right. Yeah.
We're the meanest to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you heard the thing where we're a mirror, like you're a mirror for me? That was like, when I think about that, I think about it every so often, but like, I remember when I first heard that, I was like, wait, how does that, hold on. Wait, that's kind of true. Because like, say I'm like just harshly judging you in my head, it's because I'm also harshly judging myself. So yeah, that was like a big eye opener. Like the way you treat other people is typically how you treat yourself as well.
Totally. It's our own judgments really that we're like perceiving in the world. Like other people are just who they are, you know? And when something comes up in us, like about that other person, like it really is us that we're feeling and experiencing in that moment. But God, how inconvenient, like God, it's like, yeah, I mean, if we really understood all the judgments that we have as are like really about us, it's a really difficult pill to swallow. It's a super difficult pill to swallow. But I like to say that like everybody can be your teacher, right? Like everybody, especially the people who bring things up in you, especially the people who you have the harshest judgments for. Like those are your super professors, you know, like those are the people you have the most to learn from.
Especially in romantic relationships.
Big time.
I feel like, so my thought was, I told you I was like abstinent for a year because fuck me, I'm a horrible person. I shouldn't be with anybody. But I thought in that year, I'm like, okay, I'll learn how to be like a better person to a partner. But the reality is you can't learn how to be a better partner without being in a relationship.
So true.
At all.
It's so true.
It was like this delusion I was like believing.
Yeah.
And like being in a relationship now, I've learned so much more about myself and how I want to be treated and how I want to treat somebody else. And I couldn't have learned that being single.
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that. Relationships are the biggest triggers because you get so intimate with that person. And in the beginning, at least, I feel like we want to try to put our best foot forward and like be that like perfect person. But then eventually, like, you're going to trigger the other person.
Yeah, walls start coming down.
Oh, yeah. And usually we pick the people that are going to trigger us the most. And we don't even realize that we're doing it. Like, you know, it's like a subconscious thing that happens. It's like you pick the person who's going to bring all the stuff up that you need to get rid of. And if you're willing to go through that process, I think relationships are one of the probably best catalysts for growth. But so many people would rather run away from that.
100%. That's what causes the breakup.
Are we advocating for like everyone to be in a relationship right now? I maybe it's not that, you know, maybe like I think there's a certain amount of personal work that you have to do like even before you can be in a healthy-ish relationship.
Yeah, like what place do you think you should be at internally before you get into a relationship?
That's a great question. I think you should at least be in a place where you can look at your own self. Like you can, even if you react in the moment, like you're willing to accept that you played a role in things. Like some people can't take accountability or responsibility for anything. I've been there, you know, where I was blaming everybody. If you're a blamer, if that's like your go-to thing, that's probably a good indicator that you shouldn't be in a relationship unless you're willing to look at the fact that you're a blamer. Like you need to be at that point. Like I'm in a growth mindset. Yeah. And I am going to use whatever's in front of me, if it's this relationship or whatever, to learn something about myself and to grow and get better. That's the point.
Facts. I agree. That's the answer. That's the correct answer.
It's a process, though. I mean, it's a process. Relationships they're hard. They're hard. You're in a relationship right now. What are the qualities in your partner that you like admire or that compliment you?
I feel like recently in this relationship, we have both, it's been greatly emphasized, like, wow, we are a mirror for each other. Like things come up for you that hurt me and things come up for me that hurt you as well. And it's like, wait, this is like the craziest dynamic to have right now. This gives us a chance to both work on it together. It was like almost like a compatible issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, okay, so now we get to take this first step, you know, this next step to progress and growth. But the most beautiful part is that we're both willing to work on that and like find a compromise and like a solution. That what you said with knowing that we play a part in things, like, is a quality I very greatly admire. Like she knows she's not perfect. I know I'm not perfect, and we both have places to learn and grow. And just obviously there's like qualities that you know we love to have. We'd ideally want to have in a partner. Like, oh, she's creative, she's beautiful, she has all those things. But like morals are very important with obviously how would you want to treat another person, how she treats herself. Is something I greatly admire. The way she carries herself and the way she shows up in the world is huge.
Yeah, it's important, I think, to admire your partner, right? Like you want to have somebody who you feel that sort of like, you almost like look up to them in a sense. Yeah. Because I feel like it brings out the best in you. You know, you want to show up as your best self because the person in front of you have so much respect and admiration for the person in front of you. And you want to take on some of those qualities and you hope that they have the same feeling for you. Like you should both like sort of admire each other. I think it's an ideal dynamic to sort of be with somebody.
And it's funny because I never gave it much thought of like the qualities and like the traits I'd want to have in a partner until this relationship. Like before, I was just like, we get along so great and you're pretty.
It feels good.
Yeah, it feels kind of good. Like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
But like all those other things of like issues coming up and how do we deal with them? Like that was something like, oh, there's an issue, I'm done with you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're not compatible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you struggle? Well, I struggle sometimes in a relationship with like when a relationship is good and it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to put all of my energy like into the relationship, like
codependency.
Yeah, like codependency. Like like it just feels like you want to gravitate towards the good feeling of the relationship, and sometimes that is to the detriment of like other things in your life. It's like, well, this thing in my life is crap. This thing in my life is chaos, and this thing feels so good. Like this is where I find love. So like, I mean, do you ever feel like the impulse to like lean into the relationship and like pay less attention or pour it into the other areas of your life less?
So that was my fear going into a relationship, because I've done that before, where I completely put aside like work and my recovery. I put all of that aside for this person. Oh, they want to hang out with me right now. Of course, let's do it, even though I have this thing to do. Like I used to throw my life to the side just to give this person attention or whatever it was. So like I did that to the extreme before, and then like now, okay, I'm in the dating scene. Now I'm scared of that because I don't want that to happen. Like I genuinely do want a healthy relationship dynamic. With this one, I haven't really had that issue because she is so supportive of all the things I have in my life. And she like actually encourages me to be active in those things. So like right now, like it was something I was weary of, but it hasn't been an issue because I get to prioritize like things like this podcast and my work and my recovery and like my mental health stuff.
Was it a difficult conversation at all when you first met her, talking to her about your recovery journey?
No.
No?
No, I just threw it on the table. I wanted that to just be known before like we go on like date number 2 or something. Like if you just feel weird and just like unsure and unsafe by the fact that I am in addiction recovery, it just wasn't going to work, I don't think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You almost have to lead with it.
I did. Like, well, towards the, the middle or the end, for sure, I definitely just brought that to the table. I was like, yeah, I have 3 DUIs and I'm sober and I used to struggle with drugs a lot. She was like, well, are you okay? Like, and I obviously explained like my recovery process. Yeah. And she was like, oh, that's cool. Keep it up. And like, I'm like, okay, that. Sweet, easy.
Damn, more people should lead with their BS.
It's funny because I've heard of people who just like don't want to bring it up until a few dates in.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine it would be scary for some people, but that's how you can vet like the people who should and shouldn't be in your life. If somebody can't accept that or is scared by that, like obviously not going to be, shouldn't stay.
So obviously it's not like, like my addiction recovery isn't me, but it's definitely like a big part of my life now. Yeah. Cause I don't want to like, obviously just come off right off the bat when I meet somebody like, yeah, I'm sober. But if you want to be, like in my life on a day to day and I'm kind of like vetting you right now, like, yeah, this is a part of my life. What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a good philosophy for like other areas of life too, is like being yourself, just like having the courage or whatever it would take to be yourself in that moment and just to present with like whatever is real and authentic. And then if the people in front of you don't like it, they're, not the people for you.
Yeah.
And that's a good, we started this conversation sort of talking about social anxiety.
Yeah.
And anxiety in general. And I think anxiety comes from a sense of like wanting to control the things around us and like maybe for you wanting to be perceived a certain way, for me too. But like maybe the best thing for people to do is just to show up however it is that you are with whatever it is your story is. And that's how you find the people who are meant to be for you. And if the people can't accept you, then they can't. Exactly. Then they're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I will just say that I think you're amazing to be around, and I'm happy to have had this conversation with you. I feel like your energy, maybe it's because of everything that you've been through, but it really made me feel like I could like show up to this conversation safely as myself. And
yeah,
I think it speaks to the work that you've done. And
thank you.
So proud of that.
I appreciate that. Sweet. But I do have a question for you though. Because some of the things like you asked me, I kind of wanted to ask you, like, how do you cope with anxiety?
Yeah.
You say you journal.
I definitely journal.
What are like the most anxiety inducing things for you? Let's start there.
So for me, I guess what I'll say is there's a sense inside of me that I have to do everything right.
Ooh.
So there's like imagine just the word right on like a pedestal. And like, I am just always trying to like do things right. Right now, I just graduated law school. Before that journey, I was a dancer. As a dancer, I always wanted to be perfect. I always wanted to do the moves right. I always wanted everyone to think I was doing it right. In law school, I wanted to get every answer right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to say the right thing to the person in front of me. And that's like a hellish way to live sometimes.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I definitely do like practical things. Like I journal. When I'm being really good, I meditate. But I also just like try to remind myself that there's no such thing as right.
And yeah.
Like that whatever I am doing is right, because that is what is natural and authentic to me in the moment, that there is no perfect mark that I'm ever going to be able to hit. So yeah, that's like almost like a mantra for me. And yeah.
Especially with something creative like dance, creative also period, there's no real right way to go about things.
Yeah, right.
Right. So it's funny that was your thought process.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a monster in my life. Just like the idea that it's like perfectionism, right? Like most basically. And I think probably a lot of people struggle with some version of this. But like right doesn't exist. Perfect doesn't exist. And sometimes perfect just is whoever you are, whatever you are in that moment. And it helps me sometimes too to think of it as like, well, maybe the person in front of me, like I said earlier, needs me to be anxious. Maybe they need me to fuck that up. Maybe they need me to be the worst version of myself. Like, maybe it's going to do something for them in their day. Like take it out of myself and put it into that other person. Like maybe me showing up exactly as I am, as imperfectly as that might be perceived by me. Maybe that's exactly what this moment needs. Right? Maybe this conversation is going to go exactly where it needs to go because I'm anxious or because I'm not perfect. And so that's a conversation that I have with myself a lot of the time. And a lot of my journal entries look like that,
Yeah.
Like, there's no such thing as perfect.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I feel like that stems from a fear of failure. Because I have that same fear. And another thing that makes me extremely anxious is responsibility. Ooh. And in my life today, I do have a lot of responsibility, which is weird. It's so weird for me because I never thought that far. Of like, yeah, Laisha, one day you're going to be an adult who has to pay rent and go buy her self shit to eat.
Yeah, but responsibility is actually, it's like, it was a 4-letter word to me my whole life too. But it's actually so good for you. Like if you can get your mind around that, like the idea that you have responsibilities is actually is good. Like imagine having no like take responsibility out of the equation, like for real. Like you have nowhere to go, nothing to do, nobody to be accountable to. Like that's actually, if you play that out, that's hell. Like that is a terrifying reality to be in.
Yeah.
Because you never do anything, you'd never accomplish anything, you'd have nothing to be proud of, your relationships would be trash.
Yeah.
Like you want responsibility. As scary as that is, it really does ground you as a person, and it makes life meaningful in a lot of ways that it wouldn't be without it.
It's so true.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Because, and that, again, responsibility almost ties in with control. Especially with a creative job that I have, like with Fuck the Stigma. There's not a set way to go about doing things.
There's no right way to go about it.
Exactly. And I want there to be, like, I wish there was just like
a blueprint.
A blueprint to do, like straightforward to do tasks. because that makes me, like I get to check it off. Like, okay, that's done. But this is like almost somewhat freelance, and things will not go as planned. Things won't be perfect, aren't going to go perfectly like how we thought they would go. And I know that in the back of my mind. I'm like, okay, obviously things are going to pop up. Things are going to happen. Something's not going to go as planned, but I think that might be the way it was supposed to go.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'm going to find a solution to said problem.
Yeah. And sometimes the best kind of stuff, I think, comes out of those like moments when things go left. Like when things go awry, sometimes the best, you make the best connections, the best experiences. Like we should embrace like the unexpected. I think that's maybe somewhat of a cure to anxiety. Like just know that like magical stuff happens in the unexpected. You know, it could be terrible, but it could be amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's also kind of ties back into faith.
Totally. Oh my God. Yes.
I think faith is a really big, honestly, I think that might be how I mainly cope with anxiety.
Faith.
Is by having faith. I'm not saying like have faith in God. Exactly. That's not exactly what I'm saying. But having faith that it will work out no matter what happens. Like it's going to be okay. Like think back to your like, past life experiences where something went wrong. Like didn't,
Yeah.
Wasn't there a solution at the end? Didn't it like work out in a way?
Right. And if it hasn't worked out yet, maybe it's going to work out. Right. Like if you feel like you're in the shit, like maybe you just haven't gotten to the worked out point yet, but like remember all the times that it did work out. And that's a good place that's a good like reminder for yourself.
Yeah. Grounding point.
Yeah. Like here we are. Like, look, everything worked out. Like all the things that we were scared about yesterday, like here we still are, and we're going to keep being here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like one foot in front of the other.
Another thing I kind of wanted to get your perspective on was addiction. Because you're somebody that hasn't struggled with it, you don't have direct experience with it. And then recently with like Fuck the Stigma, you're kind of maybe, I don't know if this is like your first time like getting, like maybe education or experience stories on it. So how do you perceive addiction with somebody who hasn't struggled with it?
When I hear people tell their stories about addiction, oddly and surprisingly to me, I can like relate to those stories. I feel like we all can understand the feeling that there's like a not in like a hole inside of us, like a not enoughness or an unease or a void or whatever you want to call it. There's something in us that feels like it's not whole.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. And I think whether that is like as intense as it can be for somebody with addiction who needs to numb themselves or whatever it is that addiction gives them, we all can relate to that sense of feeling like we need something external to us to like complete us or make us feel good. And so my take on the whole addiction thing is that anybody could become an addict potentially if they just give in to that part of themselves that doesn't feel whole. And I have a lot of compassion for it. I relate to it very much. And I also think that there's a lot of hope in it because it's such a human thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a human thing. And I think everybody, addicts and not, people who are not struggling with addiction, I think that the way forward is just to realize that you kind of are whole, even if it doesn't feel that way. And that there's an internal journey that would reveal to you that you have everything that you need. And that there isn't really anything external to you that's going to make you feel fully whole or fully good, except for going inside of yourself and finding it in there.
It's so true. It's fun. Yeah, because I've recently heard like frequently that a lot of people who don't struggle with addiction like can really relate to some of the things we say.
Totally.
And also sometimes we just have a different vice. Because with people, with addicts and alcoholics, it's not the drugs or the alcohol that is the issue. It's like that hole, that hole that we have inside of us. And we happen to choose drugs and alcohol as our solution to that issue. And our brain has made that connection. Xanax makes me feel so much better. That's me now. Like, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But some people choose other things. Eating,
TV,
shopping,
Netflix,
TV, scrolling.
relationships, like a lot of the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I even think thoughts, like anxiety in and of itself, like the addiction to trying to control your surroundings.
And trying to make sense of everything in your head.
Yeah, that's an addiction in a way.
It's so funny because I was on the way here. We're in New York right now. We never said that.
New York.
On the way here, I'm on the train. And I'm feeling anxious. And on the train, I'm like, okay, I just need to think because it's going to make me feel better. Because the more I think about this thing, I'm going to have less anxiety about it. But that is so not true. My brain, like, there's nothing I can do in that moment to, like, solve an issue that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I go to my mind, like, it's kind of, I think I've even heard you say this on a podcast before, but it's like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Like, why do I consult my own brain for solutions? Still, I will never know.
When that's the thing creating the issue.
Yeah. It is like banging your head against a brick wall. It's like I'm only going to create more problems by going up here.
Yeah.
Like the only times that I've ever really solved a problem is when I get still and I get out of my head. And then the solution just sort of reveals itself to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like an insight that happens. But this overthinking, never, ever solves the problem.
It's so funny that I went to that on the train. I was like, yeah, thinking is going to make me feel better.
Right. Let me think this through. It's like, maybe don't do that. That's a really bad idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but how human of a thing, you know, like that's the thing about it. Like some people are addicted to thoughts, but we're all addicted to something. And we're all, I think, really just running away from something inside of ourselves that is not so convenient to deal with or won't feel so good to deal with. And I think facing that thing is the best thing that anybody can do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what's so unique about the human experience. I doubt there's any other animal on Earth.
No, there isn't. Like, I think you can confidently say that. Like, a whale is not over there going, what should I eat for breakfast today? Like, they don't care.
Yeah, like, what should I say in this meeting?
Yeah, exactly. I'm so anxious right now. No, that's us. It's humans. But there's something also kind of, I mean, I always do this, but there's also something so beautiful in, like, the struggle of it all because we're all in it very much together. Like if you want to be sure about one thing, you can be sure that the person in front of you has something that they don't feel totally okay about. Like everybody is suffering with something and it sort of connects us in a way.
That is so true. Yeah. And we feel as if we're the only ones going through it.
Yeah.
Because I was also thinking about this, that I'll use addiction as an example. We often feel like we're going through it alone. And even sometimes there's like a unique issue you're encountering, but there's no way that somebody else hasn't gone through the same thing.
Right.
And they may have found a way out.
Right. Yeah. Is that what I imagine, like going to meetings and things like that is good for that. Like for that reminder that like, oh yeah, like I've been through a lot. This person's been through a lot. Like this person's been through crazier things than even I have, or, you know, like hearing other people's stories is probably a good reminder.
It's funny though, because actually, yeah. So in the beginning with recovery, addiction recovery specifically, I tried to use your experience and your story, even though I can like kind of see myself well in your story. Mm-hmm. I tried to find the differences and make me different from you. Like, oh, we're two different people.
Like distinguish.
Matter of fact, yeah, I'm not an addict. Because of everything you said,
right.
That was insane.
Right.
I
must not be that.
Yeah, right. I didn't do that. I didn't experience that. So,
right.
I'm cool. I'm not an addict. So you can like honestly like just manipulate it in your head as well.
Well, that's also what your head is going to do. Like your head is always manipulating and lying. My mom loves to say, if you live in your head, you live in a bad neighborhood. And it's just true. I mean, nothing good happens really up there unless you're doing a math problem. You know, like if you need to do math, your brain is where you should go.
Yeah, the only helpful thing your thinking like can do for you is help you like solve like a legitimate like problem, like math or figuring out how to build something. That's like where your thoughts are really helpful. Yeah. Otherwise, not so much.
I think that's what your brain is for. You know, like it's for solving those like very in the moment, like little tangible problems. but it's certainly not for like trying to figure out what you should do with your life. Like, honestly, seriously, I think that comes from your heart if it comes from anywhere.
So you think we're misusing our heads?
Yes. Yes. I definitely think that. And I think that I would be bold enough to say that most people are addicted to their own thoughts and trying to control their lives and the situations and people around them. And I think it's a losing game.
Yeah, 100%. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thank
and
you.
like just providing your insight and just chatting with you. This has been the best like 3 hours of first meeting somebody.
It's been awesome. I loved it. I loved meeting you. I loved having this conversation. And I think Fuck the Stigma is going to be big.
Thank you. I appreciate it.